Look, dear one, let me add a comment to a comment to the above recording. 4999 G1B, this is C. I might not be able to advise myself, but I can certainly advise you, if you know what I mean, in loving kindness. Avoid difficult places. Don't deliberately shop in difficult part of perhaps your big city where there is mental illness, there is anger, there's hatred, there's violence, there's chaos. You know, you're not in heaven at present. I mean, the kingdom of heaven's within you. But don't tempt circumstances deliberately. That's madness. Avoid places where you could say this is very unloving, where perhaps there are homeless people that are mentally ill, some of them, and true, they're in great need, but God has it in hand, not you. You're a child, and I don't want my child deliberately walking into brutality and violence. So I would say to my kiddie, look, don't you avoid such people now. Skirt around them and get off the scene quickly if you can. Just quit. You're not there to be me, to be a mature, capable adult that perhaps can cope in difficult situations. I don't think any of us are that mature, of course. We'd have to be God to be able to cope with all situations. It's better to simply avoid evil. Be reasonable, be rational. Keep away from it. I don't send my kid deliberately to a bad school where they're going to be at risk and in danger. And I don't want them to walk into difficult places. You know, if it's a lady, I don't want her to be on the street at night, vulnerable. In fact, these days, even if you're a young chap, you can just get attacked because a gang wants sport of such. And we've had, my second wife and I had a lodger who was so attacked. But it was too late at night, and he was there with a friend, and the two of them were attacked by a bigger group, of course. You would say, casually in the vernacular jargon, he was beaten up. Not so beaten up, he was injured and went to hospital though. But you know, a really bad experience. And one would say, well, you shouldn't have been there that time of night. It was about 11 o'clock and you were walking the street. You weren't in the safety of a car. You know, I mean, he didn't have those sort of, that sort of wealth to protect himself. You know, he didn't have a car. But so he shouldn't be in difficult places if he can avoid it. And you would advise your child likewise, wouldn't you? Do you see? Well now, you know how you should be too. Be careful, dear one. Careful in a most reasonable, rational way. Certainly if we find ourselves in difficulty like I found myself yesterday, as I recounted in the above recording, we're trusting God that He protects us and keeps us. And in this circumstance, He clearly did. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. But don't deliberately be in such a place. You sort of think, in a sense, self-righteously, well, why shouldn't I be? I want to shop there. You know, it's very convenient. It's my sort of shop in some ways. but in other ways it's not. So perhaps I should avoid it. It's certainly worth considering such, isn't it? We should be reasonable, shouldn't we? You don't need to shop there, Marshall. And perhaps it is slightly cheaper or better value, but be careful, dear one. Be on your guard. Not obsessively, but reasonably. Is that the best I can say in advice and help? Let me think a second. Well, yes, I think it is the best I can say. Don't deliberately put yourself in danger. You wouldn't advise your children to do so. God doesn't want you to either. Yes, he can come to your rescue. And by his grace and kindness and love, he will. Avoid difficult lessons. You may not have to take some lessons, you know. Purpose good. Purpose harmony, and abide in harmonious situations. Avoid the chaos of evil. It's what we are about as godliness. Sanctified. Kept apart from the evil. Don't deliberately walk into potentially difficult situations. Choose literally the safer option. The more godly, the more holy, the more peaceful, the more full of life and goodness. Be ye holy, sanctified, kept from the evil, John 17. I pray not that they be taken out of the world, but kept from the evil. You could say, well, you're meant to be in tough areas so you can be a witness and a help and a blessing. You can throw yourself into the rioting crowd if you wish. But it's not clear you'll do much blessing. They don't have ears to hear. Some are just filled with hatred, poor souls, and revenge, and random behaviour. I don't deliberately send you to a bad school. I don't want you to deliberately belong to something where you're at risk. I can remember when I was a young man, I went to what was called Victor Sylvester's dance studio. But it was a seaside town, and of course that's got its tough elements. And I was there one night, and I danced with a girl. In those days, you know, youth dance, you'd go to a youth dance and you didn't know the people there, but it was a place you could dance and hopefully meet someone nice. And I realised this girl I was dancing with, I didn't know her, she was upset. I said, are you upset? Would you like to sit down? Yes. So I took her to the edge of the dance floor and sat her back down, presumably roughly where she came from. And within a few moments, two chaps came up to me, both big. One very big and heavy, and too old a person really to be there. He was more a chap in his 30s, not a teenager, or a very early 20s, not that at all. And And he had a younger bloke with him who was also tall, not so robust, but clearly strong and able. And came up and said to me, I didn't know him, of course. I remember I'm quite a tall lad, I was 6 foot, but I suppose very middle class, not a roughneck, so to speak, you know. And he said something like, "Will you make my not his girl, but made this girl cry?" I can't remember whether I had time to say no. I didn't. I didn't know anything about it. Anyway, he hit me straight in the face. Right on the nose. And I just stood there bewildered. It would have been pointless to have fought him back because he was 6 foot, but he was as well, and much more able at fighting and used to it than I am. Goodness, I had no fighting experience, really. So I just took it in the middle of this dance floor, and presumably, I mean, nobody was dancing at that moment. It was just after the dance, you know, the last piece of music. And so people would have just been sitting around looking, and they would have all seen. And so I just turned, just over 90 degrees to my right, and walked off the floor. And out down the stairs, out the building. And I certainly didn't risk going there again. You know, it's a dangerous place. More dangerous than I thought. I met this chap in a surprising way. Some months later, I was in a shoe shop in the high street of the same town, this seaside town, Southend. And he was actually serving. I saw him in a different light now, because he was an assistant in the shop. More civilized than I thought, you know. And I think he knew. He recognised me, and I recognised him. And of course I was afraid of him, because this chap is violent. I didn't say anything to him, because fortunately I was in a very safe place here somehow, because he was in a work situation. And I don't remember buying whatever it was, you know. And of course I avoided that shop again. Just be reasonable, dear one. Avoid situations where you're at risk. It might be with an ex-partner. I have one that's well, I've said before, haven't I, that hates me. It's best to avoid her. You can't bless her. She won't take blessing from you, Marshall. It's best to avoid her. Let her get on with her life and leave it to God. It's not your scene. It's not your calling. I don't want my children to put themselves at risk. It's a bad habit. Be ye sanctified, separate in a sense, in the world but not of it. Choose the safer place, always. The safer situation. Don't battle to do things that God can do without your help. Yes, you are called. In the right circumstance, you say to someone, well, It's a great blessing to practice thanking God. It will transform your life. But not to those that don't have ears to hear. That would be madness. Hear me, dear one. For your blessing and safety. Do you know there's actually no need to have hard lessons, except God sets it up. And you could say he did yesterday for me. Shopping there, and suddenly this person verbally attacks me. You shouldn't be in that place. So you get certain goods cheaper and better there. So that's not important, is it? I'm concerned for the welfare of my children. I provide. Always. I don't want them to walk into difficulties. How much more our Heavenly Father, who loves us perfectly. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad.